understand it. The first thing that you have is that I'll actually start with the issue of the sanctions. You've got that Zidera bill. What that Zidera bill does is that, like, every entity that's any African country that you can talk about, they've got a budget deficit. The way that you finance your budget deficit, if you go to Kenya, you know, I hear people talking about that Kenya is doing so well, Rwanda is doing so well. I've been to those countries, lovely countries, right? They're doing so well. The reason why you've got the charade that they're doing so well is because you've got the IMF who come in. We've got no one who's giving us any money to plug in on the budget deficit. We've had countless meetings with the IMF, you know, they'll face that as long as we've got that bill, there's no way we're ever going to get any budget deficit, any budget deficit support. So what this means is that, like, you then have to make sure that you live within whatever it is that you're generating in the. And what this also means is that, like, for instance, when you look at the size of the deposits that we've got, or the money that we have to run our country with, it's not enough to be able to take care of everything that we need to take care of. What you end up having is that, like, the cost of money in Zimbabwe is actually very high. Because the cost of money is very high, is that, like, if the cost of production is very high, you end up having a situation where you've got probably the most expensive bread in Africa. What it then also means is that, like, when you're looking at your basket of goods for you to salary for your employees, the level that you have ends up being higher than any other salary that you're paying everyone else in Africa. Like, you find that, like, on a US dollar basis, probably our civil servants have got the highest salary if you do minimum wage, right? What then this means is that, like, you have the cry that people are saying that you know, we're having over 90% of budgetary expenditure going towards my salaries. The social infrastructure and productive infrastructure, then you can have a better country. So in terms of growing your revenue, when you look at the income statement of the country, there's your Ministry of Industry and Commerce, there's a Ministry of Mines, and then there's your Ministry of Agriculture. When you look at the Ministry of Mines, you've seen what has happened with gold. Production has gone up. You've seen what has happened with platinum. Production has gone up. Prices have improved. You've seen what has happened with chrome. Prices have also gone up. Production has gone up. The story in terms of mining is fantastic in terms of the numbers. You go to agriculture, you've seen what has happened with the initiatives that you've seen the initiatives that are also now coming up in terms of cotton. Because, like, when you're the private sector, when the private sector was entrusted with running the cotton industry, they actually ran it down. And government has had to come in terms of command livestock. So in terms of the numbers that we're having in terms of agriculture, the numbers are fantastic. They're growing. There's growth there. When you look at industry, with industry and commerce, there was the cry that, like, oh, we're exporting jobs. We've become a supermarket for all the goods for South Africa, and everyone is just dumping their goods. Then you had the SA64. What SA64 did is that, like, oh, capacity utilization went up, but it brought a new problem. The new problem is production. The majority were able to produce them locally. And what ended up happening is that we had to start importing this. Remember, when you were bringing in finished goods, I'll give you an example of cooking oil. When you're bringing in cooking oil, you have the Badelas, the Mohamed Musas, they'll talk to their cousins in South Africa for cash, they send the cash back. You start producing locally. When you start producing locally, all those local producers have to go and line up to the Reserve Bank. And the next thing is you've got pressure on the nostro accounts. So you've got a new set of problems. So, you know, I actually like the comment that the gentleman at the back made, that, like, sometimes we are our worst enemies as Zimbabweans. We focus on the negativities. And we actually don't notice that, like, some of the problems that we have, the good policies that we have, and it's an issue of making sure that how do we then rationalize the new problems that we've got. So the combined initiatives that we've got, I challenge anyone, the stats are there for everyone to see. Fantastic numbers. Numbers are we're doing great in terms of the numbers, in terms of what you're seeing in terms of productivity in agriculture, in terms of productivity that you're seeing in terms of mining, and also productivity in terms of the industrial sector. But we've got a new set of problems in terms of how do we then bring down our costs. We can only bring down our costs the day Zidera goes. When will Zidera go? It's clear Zidera will go the day our president leaves power. They're very clear about that. So I do not expect a situation where we're saying that we're going to get out of the problems that we've got in terms of the costs that we've got in terms of productivity ever really changing anytime soon. But what we've got in terms of what we can control is making sure that our revenues go up. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Honorable Kupe. We want to appreciate, in fact, I wanted to hear from you how the command initiatives in terms of the pricing models are sustained, because I know that the challenges that are there, but I'm sure business will then come
from sanctions. So just
thank you. I'm glad that we also have female participants. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. My question is for Honorable Mukupe. I think much was said about the impact of corruption as a whole. And while I'm very thrilled that those who were abusing inputs were arrested, I am curious to know who was held accountable for the GMB moisture, because really, if nothing is done at that level, we are just talking a lot about corruption.
I was going to ask that one too, but thank you very much for doing that. Account
that was put under comment.
We end up saying to Snabas Parliament, you must feed us with information. You must feed us with information. And then you then turn around and say, no, this parliament is useless and so forth. It's the voter who's useless, not parliamentarians. So we must understand that. So on that one, the aspect of the political will is certainly not there. I think for a very long time, we as parliamentarians, I remember at the first sitting in 2013, Honorable Maximure being the Honorable Chinamasa, remember, he moved the motion that we must have an ad hoc committee on. It was shot down. It was shot down. It was within the standing order rules that we have. It was shot down. I didn't have the willpower to even move with it, because we said we must also checks and balances, understand what's going on and so forth. And the day got into a level where even the speaker regrets that inquiry shut it down, because it would have not gotten to the levels it has gotten to us from a constitutional point of view. This is where the vice president has done this. If we cannot respect our own constitution, how do you expect people to put in money where you don't even respect your own laws? So just hit back at the constitution at your party level, and you want to now be in government. How will you uphold that constitution? Constitution.
Keep this chat. But you must also know that he was the chairperson of ZANU-PF, so until he was shut down. This is a very good initiative. When I was invited, I must be frank, I was not quite comfortable. I didn't. And they're inviting me. What is the case? Because in this country, you have to be very careful. Trust levels are very low. Through ice cream, you will be caught empty. But thank you very much. Let us make this the moral of the story to a kind of engagement. It is very other MPs. Honorable Kube, just your response. I also realize that time is also running out, so we want to try and account.
Bribed a police officer or attempted to bribe a police officer, raise your hand. Thank you. And for the raise your hand. Okay. I want to get there's always this cry about corruption. And when people start talking about corruption, they always look at government and always think that corruption is only about, these honorable MPs, someone for something. Whether it's getting getting into nursing, chipurisa, So we first have to look at ourselves and accept we have to change ourselves and move towards a society that's not corrupt. How many people are actually paying that? Now, if I talk about your passive income, are you even declaring it? Everyone are and making some money. You're not. Right? And at the end of the day, government depends on your taxes. And then the cry is that government is not providing my services. So I'm saying, let's look at ourselves and judge ourselves before we start judging government. People are corrupt. Corruption is everywhere. There was an issue that was once, I spoke about this in the Honorable Indaba. I audits in Zimbabwe. And he said that he tried to raise it in cabinet. My understanding of taxes is that, if I'm driving a $20,000 car outside that I bought, that on average 35%, 85%. So where is the 35%? People building multi-million-dollar mansions. You've got these investors like on a windmill good of fire. And we applaud such stupidity. We have to be serious. This is not a ZANU-PF thing. You're robbing the future everyone. So sometimes I think there's this thing that people are used to the fact ZANU-PF, and you go on and bash everyone, you paint everyone in the same brush. But you'll find good, when we're talking, Honorable Shinabas and Honorable Minister.
I don't want to be demoted.
You will actually find that what drives us and what made us become politicians, we want the same thing. We want a better thing without bragging. Before I left my job as an but I made the choice when I wanted to come back to Zimbabwe. I felt that I wanted to make a change in the country. But you go where you feel that probably you're going to have the greatest impact. And that's where I am. And I feel I'm sometimes said to be the opposition within the party. But it's an issue that you should have your own convictions and things that you believe in. And what you believe in is what should drive you. Yeah. So be fearless in what you say what you think, and mean what you say, and be willing to take on the establishment. I've got no problem in calling out when is corrupt. You understand? So call things as they are, because we want a better Zimbabwe. And the Bible even tells you, you go to hell. Amen. So that's my comment on corruption. So and then I think there was the issue that everyone was saying that the maize issue. But you know what I've realized with politics, when you get in, you actually realize some of the smartest people are actually some of these politicians. And I'll decipher it for you. We are buying maize. We're buying maize from the farmers at $390. So for the 800,000 tons, we're paying $312 billion. But we're getting revenue at $250. So which means we're only getting $200 million in. We're paying out 312, we get $200 million in, which leaves a budget deficit of $112 million. How are you funding that budget deficit? To print our TVs, right? Why are we printing my TVs? I told you we don't have the IMF. So we have to create, we've got a better solution to say, to try to create a thing. So you can't fault us for trying something. Chashaka. because every farmer has been paid. So we've got a budget deficit of $104 million. Let me go to what was the problem before. The problem that we had was that 800,000 tons we're importing it. So we're spending $200 million in nostro account, foreign currency, US dollars, to go and buy maize from Zambia for $200 million. And guess what? That $200 million, you had a budget deficit, you had $200 million. We've actually reduced the budget deficit from $200 million to $112 million. Isn't that smart? And what have we also not done? What have we also done? Time reducer from $200 million to $112. We've also internalized it. You got $200 million of foreign currency that we're wasting. Now we've got $112 million of a local debt. Aren't we smart? So what you now have is saying, like, how are we going to finance that Treasury Bureau $112 million? That's why we're saying, good, like, okay, that $200 million, that's now free. That was sitting in the nostrum. That's money which is now going to industry. Capacity utilization has gone up because of the SI. So is that not a good thing? We've retained our jobs. Is that not a good thing? What else have we done? It means good, like, because capacity utilization has gone up in industry, my taxes that we're going to collect are also going to go up. So it means we're going to pay what? We're going to collect the $112 million from indirect taxes to pay that $112 million. So isn't our position even better? I've proved it here. Scientifically, economically, and whatever jargon you want to say. You know, I don't use emotions. I've shown you. You prove me wrong, but this is not smart. Even Mononga no Dobera. So, and then I think the last point the last, quickly, you spoke about compensation in my farmers. This was something that was actually mentioned, Honorable Chinamasa, that like we have to start paying my farmers their compensation. But like if we're going to pay them their compensation, we have to print them out my TVs. So unless we've got a better way of going around the issue, like us printing my TVs to pay my farmers, we can do it overnight. We print my TVs, my trace of accounts, every farmer has been paid. But we're creating a problem, so we have to have a better solution. Then the last point was on the issue of my yields. The problem statement for government was that we do not want to externalize $200 million. We should grow maize locally. My farmer, akapuwa mali, they start buying the Scotch card, better, my hardwares. Go and see my hardwares. Everybody is doing well. Scotch card is better. So economy is kupamba, money is circulating. So the issue of my yields is second step. Right now, everyone is going to be fair. We've met our objective. But like if 3 years from now, 4 years from now, we still have my yields like 4 tons, 5 tons per hectare, then there's a problem. But right now, hey, that's all I can say. Thank you.
No, I know that Honorable Minister is itching to respond, but we don't want it to be a panelist exchange. You have a factual point? Okay.
It would be totally criminal of us to allow Honorable Mkupe to really go and not respond to those issues. I'm quite sad that we're not able to really tell the truth about the situation in the country. And if you think that printing TBs is sustainable, there's no foreign currency in the country because of TBs, you can't buy anything. Okay. There are still long queues. Even those that have gotten money from Command Agriculture can't even buy anything. Because if you go and you want to buy a tractor, you need to pay in foreign currency. You're sitting with 400,000 US dollars, but it's not US dollars. So how then can you say that an economy is flourishing? How can you say the economy isn't flourishing? I think we must be very clear when it comes to this issue of Command Agriculture, which I said very clearly. In terms of food security, yes, but the nostro account, how much do we have? I asked the Minister of Finance right now. The last time Chinamasa could not even respond. How much debt does the RBZ owe? These companies are owed money. And you cannot talk about being owed money where Forex is being produced, people don't get Forex. Okay? So to me, I think it's totally, it's not true for us to say that printing of T-bills is sustainable. As an economist, and I know you are smart in your own ways, but you would have to tell me how T-bills, it's the same thing as bond notes. It was supposed to be a temporary thing, okay, so that we recover in terms of Forex. We did not. You then talk about figures. The figures that we have in the country in terms of Forex and bond notes. Look at the inflation rate it is. It's sitting on 60%. And you're telling me that this is stable and yes, I mean, if Zimbabweans believe that eating is good enough for them to also elect people to be in power, then I'm sure at one point there will be a generation that will say no to that. Because we seem to think that food is more important than other things. Yet people can actually do other things and buy their own food. But we are now a nation where we believe that we must be given food because we're not adequately supplied for us to do our business. And we then get up and clap and say, things are going pretty well and so forth. No, I don't think that's right. And I think with due respect, I think even Parliament is underfunded. Why were you with us when you were saying that we must be getting our allowances and we are underpaid? I'm shocked because I thought you said everything is okay. In fact, there are more ZANU-PF members who were actually moving that they must get their monies because they realize that things are not okay. That is the public domain.
Thank you very much. I was actually whispering to Honorable Mfute that even going by your own figures, you don't destroy your own roof and then erect an umbrella. And you say it's smart, you know. if that is smartness, that kind of destructive creativity that they're doing should never be mistaken for smartness. It can't be. The problems we have are evident. They are all over, around us, in our communities, at our workplaces, and we must be able to confront. The good thing I like about Honorable Kupedo and Honorable Blisco is that we are the young breed of politicians. This is the kind of society we want. Let's differ and differ, you know, in charity, and also have an intellectual difference without fighting, without looking for stones, without looking for guns, we don't want command politics. So I have a problem. If I were to be asked, and this is my rounding up as the facilitator, thanking you, of course, for your time. We're going to take the second round, but I think time is now, and thus we need to go to the next presentation. But if I were to be asked as facilitator, what would you suggest as an alternative to command agriculture? The idea is good. We must ramp up productivity, but we must move away from just the mindset on ownership, land ownership, to the issue of productivity, to agrarian reform. We've dealt with the land reform. Let's move on to the next thing, which is agrarian reform. So let's look at the markets. Let's look at the pricing models. Let's look at how we are going to incentivize our farmers. Let's look at infrastructure. Let's look at sustainability in terms of how we are going to position ourselves. How do we also criminalize the abuse of land? Land, you have to use it or lose it. If you can't use land, lose it. But if you can lose land, then we promote you, then we make you productive. That is the direction we must take. And it must not be command agriculture, it must be smart agriculture. So that we move to technology, we move to sustainability, we now move to investing in real farmers so that there is no link between the politician and the farmer. Politicians must farm politics, but farmers must have the politics of the land and till the land for the nation. That is the way to go, and that is what we will do if we were to give us a chance as young people. Of course, I don't know if people will agree with us with this matters. But thank you very much, Sariro. I want to thank you. We want to thank you for having us this morning. I think it has been a very enriching discussion. We appreciated your ideas, and may we continue to behave in this fashion. Thank you very much. God bless you. I know a lot of you are not registered to vote. Allow me to say this. We are not saying vote for ZANU-PF, vote for MDC, vote for independent. But of course, we're going to be given the opportunity. We would say we are generally agreed, if we were to vote the three of us, that we should not vote ZANU-PF, right? So there's a consensus, the independent and the MDC, that's the way to go. But look, register to vote. If you, just hear me out. If you don't vote, you have already voted. You have voted for the status quo. And the status quo is not a desirable situation. It's not good for all of us. It's not about parties, it's about Zimbabwe. Let us vote. Choose your leaders. Don't surrender your power. You have the power. Exercise it. If you can't be a kingmaker. And you are the kingmakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Liswa and your colleagues, for electrifying the room. Now before you came in, I think before the three of you actually came in, I informed the House that in Zimbabwe at the moment, I'm the only BVR accredited MC.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's quite exciting. Would like to thank you so much for taking your time and really bringing out the issues. We are going to break for tea, but to you, the panelists who are at the top table, if you're going to be with us after tea, it will also be a pleasure for you to join us on our next session, which is going to be led by Dr. Kanyenze. But ICAZ would like to appreciate you for the time that you have taken. So we have
affording us guys the opportunity. And at the end of the day, I want a better Zimbabwe for my kids. My kids are, guess what? They're actually Americans. And I have them here. They could be in America and having a better life. But I want my Zimbabwe to be a better Zimbabwe. So I'm going to have my 2 terms in office. This is going to be my last election. And retire and do other things. Politics is not a retirement place. So yeah, I hope. I think this one will go. I don't know if you're going to get away. So thank you.
Honorable Liswa.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You know, they forgot to say something, that there are primary elections in their political parties, and you can be chucked out in the first round. So you might as well bid farewell to them. The thing beauty about me, I'm independent. There's no primary. I'm going independent. Thanks.
Thank you, colleagues. It's quite exciting to be here. I didn't know that it would be this exciting. But everything boils down to productivity, more yields. Even in whatever you're doing, if you're not productive, you are a liability. Yeah. So everybody, let's be productive. Thank you.
Very much. Let's just give our panelists and our facilitators another round of applause. Thank you so much. Let's break for tea and be back at exactly quarter past 11. Let's be back on time so that we catch up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoying myself.
You never knew your
among the politicians. It's always exciting. Thank you so much. Madam, we start to the yes. No, that's I kept saying. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. I'm sorry. Thanks. And what you are doing, the message was very clear. Those vibes. That's on you. Yeah, exactly. Did you see my smile? Too much CV started showing. You cannot say that. No, you can't. No, but also perspective. Yes, you know, the allowances. Yes. Yeah, no, I'm just rushing for this meeting. Yeah. No, take it. As the president of the president. Just a little bit more excited. Yeah.
Thank you.
request Mr. Gundani to also come up. Kindly take your seats there. Sit. He is an economist and a founding director of the Labour and Economic Development Research Institute of Zimbabwe. Dr. Kanyenze is from the University of Kenya. There are macroeconomic frameworks to facilitate job-rich growth. He has also done consultancies for various UN agencies. These include UNDP, World Bank, UNRISD, and bilateral agencies such as USAID.
On television, she's got a program. I see President Makaya is shocked because probably he hasn't watched US. Arab, Mabuku, and so forth. I think immediate past President Gloria Zarabanu, honorable members of Parliament that were here. I think the Honorable President is still here. Yeah, Honorable President, the President of the Presidents, has introduced himself. The CEO of ICAZ, Mr. Mats Naka, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I have been asked to basically present and facilitate on this issue on protectionism, manufacturing capacity utilization. Has it gone up or down post statutory instrument 64? I think it's very important to start by underlining that if you look at the history of economic development, any nation that has developed to some extent has had to protect its industry. Traditionally, the argument is that you've got nascent industries that are not ready to compete globally, and hence they may need a period of protection. What is critical, though, is that that protection has to be time-bound. So it's a strategic intervention that is time-bound, that is designed to facilitate the growth of the local industry. So essentially, there's nothing abnormal about protecting your industry. I think it's within the realm of development. Even those countries, the Asian tigers, the so-called NICs, if you look at the way they developed, at some stage they had to actually protect their own industries. And then we are going to look at statutory instrument 64. I will basically be very quick. Firstly, I will look at the initiatives in support of manufacturing, because it's not only statutory instrument 64 of 2016 that basically has been implemented to protect local industry. There are a few others that I will highlight. So I think it's very important, especially when we are looking now at what has happened to capacity utilization, so that we don't fall into the trap of saying everything is attributable to SI 64, even though it had some impact. But however, we must be mindful of the fact that there are other variables that are at play, that are operating at the same time. So it's very critical to remember that. Then I'll look at the rationale briefly, why we introduced that statutory instrument, and then the impact, then the challenges, constraints, what are the current constraints in terms of the implementation of this particular statutory instrument, and then I'll hazard a way forward, basically teasing out some of the learning points from the implementation of this statutory instrument. I also have the advantage that I'm also working with the ILO within the region, and right now we are working with the government of Rwanda. We have been assisting them for the last 3 years to basically create an employment-rich growth. They have been growing at more than 8% since 2000 per annum. But however, that growth hasn't created decent jobs. So that's what, part of what we are assisting the government of Rwanda. I will also tease out some of the experiences, lessons to be had from those countries that are actually doing reasonably well. So there are various initiatives as indicated here. Statutory Instrument 64 is one of those. And basically, when it was introduced on the 17th of June 2016, it included basically a number of products. But however, I will go to that later. There were other earlier statutory instruments that government came up with. Statutory Instrument 18 of 2016 around pharmaceutical products. Statutory Instrument 19 of 2016 batteries, polished wine. Statutory Instrument 20, second-hand clothing. Statutory Instrument 126 of 2014 around plastic packaging. Statutory Instrument 122 of 2017, which is the recent one, which basically is a consolidation of all products that require import and export licenses. So the idea now is to move away from fragmented approach, from having these separate pieces of legislation, to consolidate them into one piece of legislation. It is basically inspired by the ease of doing business reforms, where I think the idea is to make things as simple as possible. So that is where we are now in terms of that. And then, of course, we should also look at the ease of doing business reforms. We're not going to talk about this, but just to highlight upfront that there are also these reforms which have gone through the second phase under the office of the President and Cabinet, and we will look at the impact as well, because it's also related to the impact of Statutory Instrument 64, because this has to deal with the overall doing business environment. Then activities to improve the ease of exporting. The RPZ priority list to promote the importation of raw materials by the manufacturing sector. As you know now, basically government is managing rationing foreign currency because of its shortage. They've had now to ration. As a result, we put a priority list of commodities that are given pride of place. Then the local content policy, which basically is now trying to move beyond Statutory Instrument 164. As the Minister indicated at the time of the gazetting, that this was an interim measure. So the focus now is on the local content policy, which is being drafted under the Rapid Results Program, which is expected to consolidate the impact of SI 64. So essentially, this is the background. So if you come straight now to the issue of Statutory Instrument 64 of 2016, which came into force on the 17th of June 2016 as an import substitution initiative to manage inflows of imports into the country. It is an amendment notice to statutory instruments, those that are historical. If you go back to 1996 with a very similar sort of statutory instrument. Remember President Mandela coming to Zimbabwe complaining about the adverse impact of this instrument on the South Africa-Zimbabwe trade agreement of 1964. I mean, way back in the late 90s. So in essence, we've gone back to that, and we've expanded the range of products that are covered. So essentially, there are 43 products that were removed from the open general import license, and I won't go into them. That's the whole list. Out of probably more than around 10,000 products. So when we are looking at the impact, I think we must also put everything into perspective. We're talking about 43 out of probably 10,000 commodities. Yeah. So when we talk about the impact, you see, whilst it has been positive, but however, in terms of the developmental impact or the sustainability, these are the issues that are actually being discussed at the moment. So as the Minister highlighted, it was not a ban on imports of foreign goods, but it sought to control goods as a regulatory measure in order to manage the balance of trade through licensing. So the rationale, as I've already highlighted, the background, basically, high import bill. We're all worried that we're importing so much. We're actually importing more than we are exporting. The capacity utilization levels that had gone down to 34% by 2015. Closure of companies, retrenching so many workers. I think these are from the national budget, where between 2011 and 2014, 4,610 companies closed, retrenching 55,443 workers. And during the first half of 2016, we are still experiencing this spectrum of company closures and retrenchments. So to protect local industries with capacity to satisfy domestic demand, as well as to solve foreign currency shortages. So essentially, these are the issues, the challenges that were supposed to be addressed. In a summary, the high trade deficit, the low industrial capacity utilization, inadequate tax revenues for government, the high levels of unemployment, the low foreign investment. So essentially, I'm actually also relying, I'm not sure, Jabangu, I'm relying so much on your latest CZI State of the Manufacturing Industry survey, which was just released. So it's being very unfair on you. It's the most comprehensive thing that is there. I've also gone to the Reserve Bank. They've done a systematic review of SI 64. So I've also integrated into the presentation, as well as the Ministry of Industry, the Implementation and Monitoring Committee. So essentially, I also got in touch with them. They gave me some information in terms of their review of this particular instrument. So I've integrated all that beyond the CZI. What I did was found interesting is that I looked at the various newspaper coverage on this particular issue. And what is quite interesting, almost like the earlier session, there was a general consensus, even amongst our newspapers, of December 11, 20, success stories of statutory instrument 64. And then a screaming headline in the Daily News, SI 64 saved local industry. Another one in the Financial Gazette, SI 64 improves capacity utilization. And I want to quote what it says, which is quite interesting. It says, bad news sells. It is easy in these difficult economic times to believe that Zimbabwe's industrial sector is all but ground to a halt. Given the amount of media space given to reporting on the challenges facing the manufacturing sector, this attention on the low capacity utilization in local industry, company closures, and some retrenchments is not unwarranted and is indeed based on factual information. It is, however, not the full. Diligently, some companies have ramped up their production, grouping for the stones. So essentially, these are some of the stones, stepping stones, that as Zimbabweans we should take advantage of. The Financial Gazette of May also indicated the oil sector rebounds. There's been indicates that 64 had a positive impact on their businesses. However, despite capacity utilization declining by 2.3 percentage points from 47% to 45%, this is this year now, volumes of manufactured output 2017, even though capacity utilization declined, that the volumes actually went up. So this is another interesting dimension with respect to. Then the issue of retooling, companies that undertook new capital investments increased from 34% in 20, which is quite interesting and fascinating, is the impact on FDIs. Where an example, SI64 was promulgated, they then decided to actually invest in Zimbabwe. So this is an interesting dynamic in terms of part of what has happened. Another regional player, Trade Kings, which put up a 15 million state-of-the-art detergent plant in Harare. La Sefre, this is a French, a global leader in the market, acquired 60% stake in Zimbabwe's anchor list, the exclusive for attracting FDIs. So this is critical. We saw already Wamakaya showed us the numbers, isn't it? We are dwarfed by Mozambique and compare. We are now competing with the very small pointed out. The issue of increased protection of jobs from 49% in 2015 to, up to almost 53% in 2017, permanent workers and some of the subsectors. Others, these are some of the examples. I won't go into detail in the interest of time because it will become boring. And also the Ministry of Industry and Trade. I won't go into details, you can read it on your own, but it basically goes on to illustrate, highlight some of the examples that illustrate the impact, positive impact of this particular. Zimra is also, isn't it, that are play at the same time. The government, because of the shortage of, absolute shortage of foreign currency, is already rationing forex. So that is already also having an impact. But also that statutory instrument has also had an impact in terms of reducing our import bill from 5.2 billion in 2015 to 4.3 billion in 2016. So in essence, that is partly as a result of that. And this is from the Reserve Bank analysis of our imports declines that have been. So this is very also illustrating what has happened to the balance of trade, which is the difference between your export earnings and your imports. So you can see basically that after 20, balance of trade is actually declined, and this is quite extended. However, there are issues to do with constraints to capacity utilization, where the companies highlighted low demand for domestic products. These are issues that still have to local import substitution, companies to produce. But however, there are also other problems in terms of low demand for domestic products. Only 19.2% of respondents have significantly improved. So this is an area where we need also to work on this. That's why I said this is preliminary. We found a silver bullet. It's something that provides us with a stepping stone to really making improvements that will make the issues of the liquidity crisis. These are serious challenges. It looked at the final goods without looking at the soya beans. So as a result, basically, here on we're talking about the habits. In Zimbabwe, basically, we are still steeped in the old model of pricing, cost plus markup. Globally, they have shifted towards efficiency pricing. So the challenge that we have is that we still look at our costs, and then we look at the margin, etc. Which percent that indicated that the price in line with imports. So this is a challenge. It's an area that still requires attention. Competition for domestic producers, the capital constraints. In the past, you can see the major constraints. What is also very interesting from the CZI report is that all of a sudden, CA was cash or shortage of raw. It was previously. It was low demand, capital. It was not even featuring indictment of SI64. It's quite a challenge in the sense that they still have to, quite a number of the companies still also have to import. Then the low demand, that was #1 last year, the others actually emerged. So in essence, you can look at this on your own. Then you can look at the challenges. I've already highlighted the issue of, I think this is an aspect now that is quite interesting. Even though there has been this positive impact that I've highlighted, part of the challenge is that when in a recession, that's what the majority are talking about. So in essence, therefore, we need to really double our efforts in terms of addressing these other issues. What is critical in economics is that everything depends on everything else, isn't it? Right? Integrated approach. That is what is missing at the moment, this integrated approach. Yes, there's something to talk about, like what we're doing now, in terms of some of the positive impact to up our game in terms of coming up now with the whole systems approach. Look at the whole system, the whole economic system approach. And in 2017, you can see also that 74% of the respondents indicated that import licenses affected the supply of raw materials. Some of them are under Ministry of Agriculture, the lack of synchronization. Some are under Ministry of Industry, others are under Ministry of... So under the doing business reforms, we need to synchronize some of these issues. Only 15% of products are exported. Even from the products that are being produced, I was talking to the CZI economist yesterday as I was preparing for this. They highlighted this particular aspect that even the products that have been produced, only 15% is being produced. So in essence, the challenge is that the same companies now are net demanders of foreign currency, isn't it? What they are exporting is not enough actually to meet their needs. So in essence, that's part of also inflation, which is now a big issue, arising distortion in the market, isn't it? The multiple pricing that has emerged, the bond price, the RTGS price, we are almost reflecting what happened in 2008, isn't it? Which makes it very difficult to do business. And we need to address this because they really have an impact on the economy going forward. So despite the observed movements, the economy is still off the mark. In the industrial policy, the target was 50%. So if we compare, we are off the observed improvements, the economy is still off the mark in terms of the desired industrialization levels. So SI, that's the conclusion. SI64 is not necessarily a silver bullet. It may not have the desired long-term impact of developing local industry unless complemented by other measures building initiatives. These are some of the issues. And even the Ministry of Industry itself, they are actually acknowledging that we've got a challenge in the sense that unless we do something about the issue of availability and cost of capital, able to sustain in the longer term some of these initiatives. So in a way, the challenges for foreign suppliers, I think most companies are experiencing that, continued appetite for imports, poor quality and delays in delivery of 1.5 billion annually through smuggling. I think that was the number from the NCC. The issue of incessant smuggling, monopolistic behavior, threat of retaliation. I think you heard because of we are part of the SADC trade protocol. So when we came up with this special instrument, we had a lot of memory from the cooking oil sector. They were saying buy soybeans in Zambia. They were being told now by the Zambians, you want to buy soybeans so that you don't buy our finished product. No, we won't supply you with the soybeans. So there is that aspect now in terms of the regional trade agreement. So essentially, that is an shortages of raw materials, soybeans, cotton seeds, especially for the cooking oil sector, with the 7 major producers needing 220 million, which could be used to promote that. Whilst the cooking oil itself has been removed from the open general import license, however, the raw materials still need to be imported. So essentially, these are some of the challenges. So if you look at the overall impact, if you want to look now at the bigger side, we're not even talking of a huge change, isn't it? In terms of, so these are challenges. This is from there are other commodities that are not. So the overall impact you can see in terms of the overall growth of the economy. And I've got a quotation here. I won't read it in the interest of time from from the IMF, the latest Article 4 consultation, they are talking about the challenge discussed. Part of our challenge is not actually to do with sanctions. I hear a lot about sanctions and so forth, even in the earlier session. Our problem is not sanction. I always say to politicians, we are not even in a liquidity crisis. We've got a stewardship crisis. You look at everywhere where there are resources, we can't account for resources. Even the president said diamonds, now all the alluvial, you know, God has been unfair on everyone else. Alluvial diamonds, you don't have to do much. They're on the surface, things that we are putting in front. It's just, but because of visionary, we complain about all these problems. So our problem, basically, if you look at the fiscal situation, right? You'll see, 2016, the deficit just explodes, spikes, isn't it? Okay, this is part of the problem as well. If you look over time, this Reserve Bank. So you can see we're targeting this, isn't it? The manufactured. So we have got a problem in the sense that whereas in 1980, Nyerere said you have inherited a jewel in Africa, you must preserve it, isn't it? Why? Because of the diversified nature of the economy. The role of industry, where industry was contributing more than 25% to our GDP. Now look what manufacturing sector has collapsed. It's now agriculture is slightly recovered to 30%. The two are contributing 90% of our export earnings. We are back to a typical sub-Saharan African economy, which is dependent on cataclysmic factors beyond our control. Weather and external commodity prices. That's why you see now the biggest industry and now the future. Because of the economy now structurally, it has been restructured in the sense that isn't it? If someone just comes up and says, no, I can see now, I can talk to God, isn't it? You see all these things that we never saw in the past, isn't it? So where our industry is basically down here in terms of export earnings and basically agriculture. Mining doesn't create many jobs, it's capital intensive. So that growth is immiserizing. To quote the economist Bagwati said, you know, you can grow if your business indicators, if your child comes home with such a report, 129 out of 131, it has gone up. Part of the impact, let's give credit where it's due. It has improved, isn't it? Put things into context, isn't it? Let's put that improvement into context, right? Around 2017, yes, competitiveness, it has improved from 126 out of 138 to 124 out of 137. Do you say the difference is significant if you're a statistician? No, we are still a bad result. There's an improvement, yes, but it's nothing to celebrate. Or even talk about Mwanamba improve. About 126 improved from 161 to 159. Isn't it the latest? Because of the measures that have been undertaken. But I'm coming from Rwanda, a small country. 20 all these issues with all the information. I was talking about the budget deficit, so you can see what has happened recently, isn't it? Right? The treasury bills now that we are printing. So in essence, there's no cash because we are feeding into the deficit. We are financing the deficit through creating money. We are very creative. So in essence now, even the money in the bank is not there. There's no hard currency behind it. So in essence, basically, because of the problem of fiscal space, discipline. And it arises, it's not a long-term problem that was there, not from a developmental point of view. What is our development strategy? If your development strategy is not clear, there's no clarity, you can't develop by way of these statutory instruments. You have to use your development medium-term plan. And all those things we don't have. And the Bible says, where there's no vision, the people perish. So essentially, God has given us resources. The way forward, say, you start from where you are, what you have. And then you have got cotton, etc. And you begin to build capabilities around what you have, isn't it? And then you translate that into products. When I did geography at school, we were told that the best place to locate the industry is where the raw materials are. China cannot continue growing without the resources. We've got the weather. We're not a security zone. Look at East Africa, those countries that are doing well. Ethiopia, Rwanda, etc. It's a war zone, there's Al-Shabaab, and whatever you go to, you want to go. Here we don't have all that problem. It's a peaceful place, Southern Africa, isn't it? Right, apart from Lesotho and a little bit of Yakama, but it's not really that we've got the best weather in the whole world. We should be the most productive. You go to Europe, before planes take off, they are actually defrosted, isn't it? When I was in the States as part of the re-engagement team, we could not take off from Washington. The whole eastern port, it was in the summer. They could not take off planes for 4 hours because of all those hurricanes that are destroying economies in Florida. The only hurricane is the human being in Zimbabwe. and they are cohesive. But you look at Zimbabwe now, people are fighting, isn't it? Within the same cabinet, we are now accusing each other of witchcraft and so forth. We are trying to be real, yeah? Now can we move as the same cabinet? Now to really develop this country. When we are so divided and polarized the way we are. That's why we are working on this Great Zimbabwe Scenarios project. Trying to bring cohesion first. You can't do anything unless you are a cohesive unit. And the developmental states of Asia extended that cohesion beyond the state now. Almost like the liberation struggle. The liberators realized, the fighters realized, Chinhoyi and Wange, that the one with the gun is not the one who is powerful. They tried it in Chinhoyi, we know what happened. But they realized that, you must mobilize the people so that it becomes a people's war. The same thing with development. Unless you mobilize the people around a developmental agenda, you will not succeed. That's why they say Japan, the secret about Japan is that Japan did not demobilize these people after the Second World War. It remobilized them from the war to the economy. You would consult the farmers, the private sector, isn't it? What is referred to as embedded autonomy. Where the state business people is their trust. We're talking about lack of trust. Can you move without trust? We can't move. We can't trust our banks, we can't trust our institutions, we can't trust ZESA, we can't trust the railways, we can't trust. So in essence, we can't move as a country with weak institutions without this trust amongst these. So in essence, everything is tied. So we want to turn this into a virtuous cycle. This is what developmental states have been able to do. I won't go into detail. And on the social contract, we are saying, I was talking to the portfolio committee on Monday on the budget, 2018 budget. We said all the solutions were complete. Has been allocated to the national product, which is supposed to inculcate a culture of production and productivity across all sectors of the economy. And that's where the real issues are. It's not good enough to really deal with the challenges. It's not a silver bullet. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to hear from Mr. Jarangwe. I think it's mainly his reactions to most of the things that we're talking.
Thank you very much. What has been clear what's happening in the industry. Interestingly, I think what I can help is basically to say, put it into context as to what sort of a strategy is it. What is it that when we were law, this is that law before this information that we're moving goods off the open general import license. We had looked at the import basket and we were importing 11 billion at one time as a country. And we looked at the goods that were being imported. They were goods that could be manufactured by companies that we have here. But we have a company that can manufacture those goods, struggling, actually almost closing. So we say, look, yes, protectionism is considered to be a bad thing, but when we are in a state where we are considered to be one of the three fragile states in Africa alongside South Sudan and Eritrea and Zimbabwe being the third, surely we must be allowed to implement whatever it is that will take us out of these challenges. Hence our lobbying for the statutory instruments that we did. And there was implementation in I think the first one was in the chicken area, where the poultry area, where it was because of the health scare that originated from South Africa. What did we see then thereafter? We saw that there was investment by all the players in increased capacity, to the extent that right now you can buy a chicken for $4, a whole chicken roasted even for $4. So given a chance, it seems that in this point. So SI64 then came into play, again at the time that it was, we put a lot of, it was seen that the economic situation was lessening. Then we had SI64 being put in place, and it's only 43 out of 10,000 lines. But what did we see? Yes, it's not a silver bullet, but that will count. we saw, we challenged the issue of implementation of SI64. There was indicators. Up to now, Zimra is still getting, that SI64, for instance, even though the stick goes up, but the volumes went up by 5.5%, value went up by 13%. So in terms of a positive impact, which is what we're looking for production, the production went up by 5.5%. So 3 products, there certainly was impact. Unfortunately, yes, there was threat of retaliation from our compatriots, so it was not possible to add other products. Because we had looked at that import basket and seen that there were even other opportunities. Because listed there were a few hardware products, but a lot of them were foodstuffs. And what so a study that was done in the mining sector in terms of leakage reflected that of the goods that they consume were manufactured locally. There's about $500 million worth of business that's available from the mining sector. The mining leakages are extremely weak. So we currently have ICAZ is participating with the Chamber of Mines in the Joint Suppliers Producers Committee, which is trying to strengthen that and result in increased import substitution. But again, as ICAZ, we've been pushing to say, there's a need, because SI64, since you can't extend it, other countries, what have they done? They've done similar things, including South Africa itself. They've implemented what are called local content policies, which are essential to ensure that you use a large chunk of the local factors of production, in particular in the mining sector. And this is what is currently ongoing, where there's now a rapid result program to drive this. So, in essence, we believe that SI64 or the import substitution would work, because you saw there was a 20%, about a 20% drop, even in imports between 2010 and 2016, which was about $1 billion. Right now, our trade deficit, as reported in September, is running at about 26%. Likely to end in September, the country generated about $4 billion worth of exports, and we are likely to have reached maybe $5 billion by year end. We think it's possible. Issues about investment, I think they were reflected there. If you have 47% of the respondents saying that they've invested in additional capacity, I think that's again a positive indicator. So almost half your company is invested. If you were to look around, the new cement plant that's come up along the Thai Road, there is a new, I think the other one that we're operating from beyond our borders that have come in. Those are inflation. The companies that are investing in the paint sector, there were reports that they invested in additional capacity. So in a way, and this is something that we saw. For the first time, we had a policy that turned around the fortunes within 3 months. Within 3 months, we were starting to see having capacity utilization as high as 100. What is it that we feel possibly on the way forward as was highlighted, what we need to do? The politics are part of the macro environment. And if we look at what we are achieving with the problems that we have compared to the problems that other countries have, are we punching at our weight level? Are we achieving the best that we can under the conditions that we have? We believe that there is room. This is the challenge that we are throwing to ourselves as CZI. Why are we saying so? We had there was a time when Zimbabwe is one of the countries that signed an interim partnership agreement with the EU, just as an example. And Madagascar was the other one, and that's Madagascar. But they actually moved to the IEPA, the interim partnership agreement, and this is what is driving their growth. Zimbabwe try and capacitate business member organizations and other institutions to try and drive increased exports, because they saw the potential, but nothing was happening. Because they saw about, again, the responses were not quite positive. I attended one of the meetings, and what they asked was, how many of you have read the interim partnership agreement? Less than 5% of them. And if I were to ask the same thing about people in this room, I would ask, which could possibly be something. So to what extent are we looking under IEPA, under the special economic zones, under all the sea, how we can benefit from these approaches to ourselves, in as much as we are lobbying for a better macro environment in terms of the way the politics and other policies are. This is something we're pushing. But to the extent, with what we have, what is it that we are doing? You know, we had one of always talk about God has given us this, that, given us that, but what have you done is us. So this is the challenge, to say how much, what is it that we are doing. So in line with that, we are saying that say, look, we'll participate where we can to put our views in. So we, as CZI, we're participating in Zimaset, with co-chairs coming from Zimaset, other private sector. There was very poor programs, but you found that there was inadequate participation from the private sector in those programs. And the government, in these meetings, the private sector was meeting with a committee of permanent secretaries. So we believe that if we take advantage of that, because we're seeing an opening up of government in that respect, we can economic zones actually emanate CZI chamber, which came out working with NAST that came up with a position paper until it was adopted. The National Competitiveness Commission, again, was a lobby position from CZI to say, convert the Incomes and Pricing Commission into a National Competitiveness Commission, so that was the country's problem is that of competitiveness. So what we are saying is that, you know, as a country, one of the challenges is that we're working in silos. So thank you for this intervention where we are now working, we've come together to share these ideas. Because if we don't share the ideas, there's going to be very few people that will part those programs. But in terms of participants, you find that there are only a few participants that are doing it. And yet we have the highly literate and experienced population. That is one of the people that are involved. What was challenging is that if we have more people participating, then, you know, there will be leakage is a key issue. Right now, the other issue that we are driving, with SI64, we were targeting what we would term perhaps the lead products, which then should drive. Economy will only do well if we can have the rural population, which is 67. How do you do that? It is through the linkages. First and foremost, you don't need a daily head if you're not consuming your own milk. So even if the dairy producers start by milk, it's fine. Then you develop your dairy head, which is what's happening now. The country is only, in terms of raw milk, we're producing 50% of our consumption. The dairy industry is growing that head. They're actually growing the head that is in the rural areas, and we have participation with that. Yes, right now we've got edible, we're consuming soya, the soy oil that we're consuming, 90% of it is coming from what have we done by being able to produce our own edible oil. We have created an opportunity for someone who wants to grow soya beans to then buy. And what happens once they bought the soya beans and they've been paid, they come back and buy the finished food oil in order to cook. So the biggest challenge that we have, I do believe one of the biggest challenges, I said at the start, are we punching at our weight level? And why we are not is because these opportunities that were highlighted by Dr. Kanyetsi, they have to be put into play. They have to be, it takes people to make things happen. So we have to articulate these opportunities and convert them into tangible benefits for the country. And SI64 was one of those. So at the moment, we're actually working on the local content policy, as I indicated, which CZI is chairing, and for my sins I'm chairing. That was, we had been working on the joint supply and producers committee with the Chamber of Mines. So when we are successful, because we have to be positive, there is an opportunity that the 500 billion that's going out as a result of mining, we're currently spending 200. We still have about another 2 billion worth of business. So we are creating revenue for enterprises outside of this country. Whereas that could be revenue for them to be developed to the mining, agriculture, public sector spending, the tourism sector. 64, in our view, has been a success, but that is not the end of the story. We need to now, and I like Dr. Kanyetsi said, we need to have a systems approach to the country. Was that way we can clearly articulate where the opportunities are, where we fit in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jabangwe. We are moving on to our deliberations as to stay behind because we needed to hear their responses to this particular presentation. So may I request Honorable Liswa, I'm giving you exactly 3 minutes to the issues that were raised by Dr. Kanyetsi and Mr. Jabangwe.
Yeah, I think Dr. Kanyetsi is always thorough in his presentations, but I've always wondered, somehow we don't implement, he comes to Parliament, talks to us about a number of issues and so forth. And I think, for me, if you look at mining and agriculture, for example, they're doing very well. See, these two sectors are doing well, yet the profit that they make is used to import things, raw materials. I mean, business is simple. So I will never take it that, yes, there is, in terms of the figures, but if you calculate the amount of money that is spent to import, they are not making money at all. So how then can we say we're doing well? We seem to rely so much on agriculture and mining. That's the only thing. Yet the raw materials that are needed to complement these businesses, we import. So my question is that, would you rather those raw materials going and then we go which is first? Ensure that the raw materials are there, or we just go and mine and import? So it's about priority in terms of government expenditure. Where is the money going? But how much of that is going into the domestic resource mobilization? How much is going into that? Yes, command agriculture, but command agriculture has not made money. This is the other issue. But if you look at it, government is in trouble. Government is in trouble. So we are always in trouble. Problems which you say are good, because as business people and as people who are in accounts, I would really, not be comfortable in investing in money in accounts, in accountants who say we're doing well, but at the end of the day, you have not made money. I mean, and it is a culture which we seem to be accepting because of mediocrity, because of what is going on. It's the same thing as the discipline needed in terms of the fiscus. I was just sharing this. If you look at the Delight products which I mentioned here, they are more expensive now, and yet they are manufactured in Zimbabwe. So you have a situation where in the region. So what then happens, like Dr. Kanyeze says, there's 2.2 billion which is lost through smuggling. So now smuggling takes over. In smuggling taking over, you don't have mechanisms to stop smuggling. So there is no way that an economy can recover for as long as prices are high from a regional point of view. People are prepared to use their foreign currency. People will not bank because they have no confidence in that. If they bank, they'll take their money out to go and buy a product in South Africa. They are more than happy to pay duty rather than buying the same product here because it is expensive. So you have all these situations which I'm saying to myself at the end of the day, where we got into policy inconsistency. Same government. But look at the economy, it grew from 300 million, it was stable. But when 2013, when there was one government in power, how much money do they have and how much do we have? These are facts that we must talk about from a figure's point of view. It has nothing to do within politics. I'd like to know how much they inherited from the GNU that money. The GNU had 300 million. But we are better off GNU setup than we have now. And someone would have to tell me no. So to me, the discipline is required. Why am I saying this? I don't like lawyers, but I think the GNU and the finance minister really helps having a finance minister as a lawyer. I'm not sure within jail. So whether you like it or not, they have to do things by the book. If they don't understand, they don't move. We then had Honorable Patrick Chinamas. We then had Honorable Chinamas, who, to my mind, was probably the best minister. He was cutting down on expenditure, even in terms of the government employees. I want to round off and say, even the pre-budget conference, we're just going on holiday. Because if you look at what we approved in the last budget, government department economists, so let's talk about what we have, not what we don't have. We are not going to pass another budget, yet 15% will only be allocated. So which means the 15% allocated is only going towards salaries of the civil servants. No wonder why the IMF is critical in saying that cut down on the civil service bill. Because that's all we are doing. We made them, we spoke to them, and that's basically what it is. Ministry of Sport, for example, got 4.02. So the question is that you are getting 4.02%. What else are you doing besides sitting in the offices? And this is true. So none of the government departments ever got what was required and so forth. So the aspect of the civil servants is a waste of money, and that's all we are working for and so forth. So again, to just round off, it becomes difficult too when we are also approaching elections. You see so we need to really get away from this election mode all the time. Zimbabweans, after elections, they go straight into election mode.
elections in election mode. So I think we need to be constructive, and I just want to say, I think ICAZ, you've done well by having to break the ice, bringing us politicians to be able to discuss this meeting. You know, I was sitting here, and I looked at Honorable Coop, and I said, I want to humble myself. I would like a situation, you know, I'm very good in terms of mobilizing, as you would know. I would love to mobilize Sichanis as president and Coop as prime minister. They just give me the portfolio of sports.
There are 4 things that we need to sort out. I think it's essential about fundamentals. It's about the essentials. It's about the hygiene issues. We can talk and talk and talk. The first thing we must get to deal with. I was just whispering to Mr. Javon to say, we are talking about success of SIA 64. But our success is in a minimalist way. How do we measure success? We've lowered our standards in Zimbabwe. Even if you go to the churches, what they call breakthrough, if you buy a round or a you say it's a breakthrough. But you go to the UK there, you tell them that I have a breakthrough, I got a round. The standards are too low. And this is why we must raise our standard of success. We can say that we've had success because our utilization is at 47%. It has now gone to 45%. No, but the production is gone up. We are trying to rationalize. We feel sorry for ourselves. Instead of just being realistic to say things are not working out. When the engine is not functioning, you don't fix the number plate. That's precisely what we are doing. No, I'll change my number plate. Now let me travel to where. That will not ameliorate the situation. The engine needs an overhaul. And where is the engine? We need to deal with the issues of vision. What do we want for our country in 2025, in 2010? And let that vision be shared by all the people across the political party divide. In the business sector, we need a shared vision behind a vision. Now, without a vision, you cannot talk about rallying behind, because there's nothing to rally behind. Number 2, we also need to make sure that in whatever we are doing, there is adequate consent. Now, in government, you can just wake up, you start something. Capital has noise. Wherever there is noise, you will never find capital. If you want to see that there is no money in a particular area, just listen to the noise. Wherever there is real money, there is no noise. Because capital is quite allergic to noise. So if you are living in an area where there is noise, know that there is no capital. If the country has too much noise, particularly in the cockpit with political inconsistency, know that there is no money. So, number 2, policy input. Number 3 is to move from the mindset of consumption. You know, we're discussing the issue of command agriculture. Our discourse is about food security. It must move from a consumption mindset to a production mindset. Let it be a food surplus. I looked at Malawi. Their focus was not food security, but food surplus. Why? Because they are producing for other markets. That way you create value. That way you add value to your narrative. Last but not least, which is important as far as I'm concerned, we just need to know what we are good at as a country. What should we be known for? You go to Japan, they are known for engineering. You go to Germany, they are known for something. You go to Switzerland, they are known for chocolate. You go to France, they are known for love. You know? What are we known for as a country? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, our honorables. May I request the floor for any reactions before I go to our 2 presenters to then wrap up. Yes, President.
Okay.
And I'll take another one. I'll just say to read. Yes.
Mine is just a short one. From a policy perspective, are we now seriously doing something about arresting corruption? Because it has got such a pervasive effect on everything that we want to do to move forward as a country.
That one is directed to who?
Well, anybody.
Anybody. Thank you very much. Go to the politicians. I didn't want to give them a chance because, you know, once I give them the microphone, but I'll do that anyway.
This one's directed to Mr. Chawang. when you lobbied for SI64, was there a strategy beyond saying we want to import substitute? Was there maybe a long-term strategy towards developing competitiveness, towards ensuring that we can then take it out and be competitive, not only locally, but regionally? And
from here going forward, since everybody has a question, we'll start with Doc.
Thanks very much for the difficult questions, Wamakaya. Are we sliding back into 2008? I think there are similarities in terms of the drivers. And the drivers, I mean, it's a very basic thing. That's why I say it's not complicated. Fiscal discipline. If we behave as if money grows on trees, then we, I mean, for instance, he did something interesting. He had a dictum. You eat what you kill. If you haven't killed anything, don't eat. Don't salivate. You salivate when you kill something. But we say so polite. We know what exactly happened. What happened is that because of the rising runaway budget deficit, which had to be financed, government ended up putting its fingers in the banking sector and took the deposits. And as a result of that, what happens? Almost like what happened in 2008, when they touch your money, there's no more trust. A market economy, you have to understand what a market economy is. China, when they understood what a market is in 1978, after Deng Xiaoping took over, that's when they started moving. They understood now, the market requires market sentiment, confidence, trust. These are critical issues, building blocks. But for us now, all the trust goes when I know if I put my money in the bank, someone can reach out and get it. And use it for something that is not productive, for consumption. And you end up now having a perennial strategy of digging a hole to fill another hole. So that's what exactly we are doing now. Moving from one place to another, digging a hole, filling another hole, digging a hole, filling another. And that's not progress. So essentially, these are very basic things. We need to understand what a market is. A market requires, discipline. The discipline that Honorable Melisco was talking about. And it's those soft issues that can help us build now the economy. Because now if government is disciplined, I'm glad that even the governor raises every time now. Says it's not my problem. It's not a liquidity issue now. The problem is in the fiscal. Fiscal, like 2008, when we're now printing, because we could not satisfy our appetite for expenditures. And those expenditures are not productive. We're not using them to do the roads, the enablers, that will enable us to grow the railways, fix the things that will really help them export. Because even if they become competitive, you still need infrastructure. You still need the railways to be running, etc., etc. So essentially, I think that's, for me, the major challenge that we have. It's a similarity in the issues. And what is so clear, as the Honorable Minister has indicated, it begins immediately after 2013. There's one party in government, and you see now even the budget, deficit rising, and also the domestic debt also becoming unbearable. So essentially, it's this basic thing of discipline, confidence, and trust that actually we're missing.
Okay, Mr. Javangwe, 1 minute.
All right, thank you. But allow me, for the sake of maybe discussions, to share what our economists they've also given us in regards to the question, are we back in 2008, 2000, and so on. There are certain similarities and there are also certain differences. And the situation basically is in how the government manages the situation here going forward. The situation that we are in, yes, there is inflation, but remember there's also what we call bad inflation and good inflation. 3 to 7% will help us grow. But anything lower than that, like when we were in a deflation, state of deflation, that we're stagnating and actually going backwards. Now, with the situation that we have, even though there's been this devaluation that we've had of the bond, the situation is a fiscal deficit that needs to be contained. Because if that keeps going, then they will continue being the issue of extending the government overdraft, which will create more RTGS in the economy and cause further devaluation. So, but with where we are saying that the government now needs to put a stop on this. If they can be that disciplined, because anything further Because the differences are, at least under 2007, the mines were not operating. Now they are operating with revenue expected to be 2.4 billion this year. There's food because we had at least like we're saying for now, we focus on food, and then we did it there. Companies that are currently operating, and at that time, nearly all the companies were closed. So it's a situation that is bad but manageable, and it now depends on how the government proceeds. The effort, it's purely in their hands. If they listen to the advice, then the situation can be arrested, can at least be stopped where it is. But the problem is the printing of the money, of the RTGS. That's the problem. Then with regards to SI 64, issue of survival. Because the companies at that time, most of them were now having capitalization around 30% and dropping. So the first thing was to give those companies life, which was now to divert demand, consumption that we're seeing to those particular companies. But again, this not being a sustainable issue, we've heard the minister continue to say this is a short-term program because it's not going to be there forever. When it's lifted, you're not competitive, then you're finished. Hence, we have had 47% of the, let's say, of the respondents investing in new capacities. Because the issue is to be competitive, you have to get rid of the old antiquated equipment. You have to change your practices, which is where we've seen us since the time pushing companies to adopt lean manufacturing as models for operations. And as we were indicating that this SI64 was put in place because the current operational environment is a high-cost one. So one of the things that needed to happen is to reduce the cost of doing business. Hence, our heavy involvement in the ease of doing business reforms, recommendations, and even just participating in those particular programs. So we are saying that, and then that's why the local project also is kicked in. And we are also, which I think we'll need to engage also ICAZ to participate in. There's the review of the ZIMASET, because ZIMASET was supposed to run from up to 2018. So there's a review process being done now. And if that is not done right, again, we're not thinking big enough, far enough, we're going to just continue talking about food, and this is where we end up. So in terms of the strategy for improvement, the National Competitiveness Commission, again, that's why we push that, because we believe that unless we can push and become more productive, we will not be competitive. So those are just some of the strategies that we're pushing to enable to help companies to then strengthen their competitiveness.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. 1 minute.
First of all, it's to do with corruption, and there's no more, unfortunately, on a system that starts, and then people follow a system. So people follow a system. So, and that's basically what I'm saying to you. The system is corrupt, societies can't corrupt, because the only way of getting things done through the system is to be corrupt, because the system is corrupt. So that's as clear as that. You can't get it any better than that, and so forth. And you recall, even in my first sitting in Parliament, 2013, I did challenge it on Hansard, it's on record, it's in the Hansard. The Minister of Mines then, I said, you know, Minister, you seem to be a great business person. What are you doing in politics? If you can have a bank, what are you doing in politics? But how did you make the money to have a bank? You see, because I wouldn't find myself in politics if I had a bank, if I had such a thriving businesses. And my point was, can we account for our wealth? I mean, it was taboo for a member of parliament to say that to a senior member of the party, but I believe the internal democracy is better. It's better to expose ourselves than to allow others to expose. And there was never an answer in terms of that and so forth. So the president comes to parliament, zero tolerance on corruption and so forth. It has become part of his speech, really. But from an implementation point of view, it's not there. This has gone as far as, even if I steal, I just go and say I belong to this faction. I'm being targeted because I belong to this faction. You've heard the Honorable Vice President even saying, no, Professor Moyo is being targeted, but there are those who've been selling diamonds. So why don't you go for those? And I thought he'd say,
including Professor Mo, let those dealing with diamonds be arrested. So you see, so it's all functional. So and young people have taken advantage, the system has taken advantage from it. We are going towards election and no one will be arrested. But I've said it on record in Parliament to my colleagues in ZANU-PF that corruption is what will get them out of power if they're out of power. Because that is the third force that has made everybody suffer. It affects the economy and so forth. And in terms of SI64, what I want to say, Mr. Jabango, is that we seem to be reactionary. I've never seen a government as reactionary as this one. You know, it gets excited. All this time, the plan is there, they don't take it, and suddenly there's the SI64. That's why that question is pertinent. All this time, why did you not take it? You know, because you want to protect your own industry. But it is the aspect of corruption. Any ban that is lifted is because they don't have money and they want to eat again. So, you know, that's basically what it is. It's done on the premise of corruption. I know you're laughing, but it is true. The importation of maize was for a long time. But remember there was Maguta for agriculture, which is the same thing as Command Agriculture. So you're just changing your name from Maguta to Command Agriculture. It was stopped because we were married. Here, there's one at my elections. Price of 390 is not sustainable, but it's to appease the electorate is we're going towards elections. When our people are going to realize that's sort for me, I know what I have to do and so forth. Honorable Chamis, I think you're it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Miswa. I think it boils down to the values. What are the Zimbabwean values? At the moment, there's no distinction between right and wrong. And the wall is not there. So you can be on this side or on the other side. I'm saying this, you know, because I've been a minister for almost 5 years. And I worked with the president. I've seen the culture. What you subsist is what you honor and celebrate in society. People celebrate openness. People celebrate kickbacks. Instead of having hands on, you have hands in. That is the mindset. And that is what we need to change as a value system. You know, I'll raise my hand and I say, when I served in government, as an opposition member of parliament, I have not stolen a dime. If I have stolen a dime, pursue me and go and account. That is the kind of leadership I believe has to be put on the forefront, but on the basis of values. And that way we'll be able to deal with corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our panelists. ICAZ has a small token of appreciation for Dr. Kanyenze and Mr. Jabango.
Are we not also going to get the second round?
That's corruption. Thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists. Do we now have Old Mutual, the rep, for a short marketing session just to lighten up? No? PowerTel? Still not here. Okay. All right. CBZ? Okay, yeah. All right. The marketing segment. As he's coming up, you can come through, sir. I would like to request Mr. Ntamba Nengwe, Mrs. Chimponda, to be coming up. CBZ is here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. That's better. Thank you. My name is Joy Shumbamini. I'm coming from CBZ Risk Advisory Services. If you look at it in the magazine, there's our advert at the back of the page. We are indeed proud to partner with ICAZ. We want to thank you for banking with CBZ. We want to thank you for insuring your businesses with CBZ Insurance. We want to thank you for insuring your lives through CBZ Life. We want to thank you for investing with CBZ Asset Management. Now we have a new subsidiary called CBZ Risk Advisory Services Private Limited. We are basically an insurance broker, a risk advisor, to say, look, what could happen to you tomorrow? Who knows now what could happen to your business tomorrow? So we are as CBZ Risk Advisory Services, we have 3 departments. The first one is short-term broking and risk advisory, where we give you advice on your business to say what risk can strike your businesses. We do risk analysis. We actually come up with solutions, and we deal only with reputable insurance companies in Zimbabwe. The second department is individual life financial planning, where we help you to do your estate planning, your wills, your trusts, general retirement planning. Most people are now afraid to retire, isn't it? Why are we afraid to retire? Because we are not prepared for it. So as CBZ Risk Advisory Services, we offer individual retirement advice. The other department is group employee benefits, where we offer group pension solution, group life assurance, group personal accident. We can be found at 59 Chase Mount Pleasant. Our email address is cbzriskadvisory@cbz.co.zw. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I would like to give a brief bio of our next facilitator who's coming up for the session, which is looking at informal economy, tapping or formalizing for contribution to GDP or the fiscus. That's Mr. Farai Tambanengwe. He is the founder and executive officer of the SME Association of Zimbabwe, which is a leading organization that helps small and medium-sized enterprises to grow their businesses into large corporations, primarily through interventions in the areas of growth strategy formulation, access to markets, access to funding, training and productivity services, provision of workspaces, as well as lobbying and advocacy. Farai has been running the SME Association of Zimbabwe since its inception in February 2012. In his capacity, he has been in the Ease of Doing Business Reform Program. He is a councillor within the National Manpower Advisory Committee, holds several positions in leading advocacy bodies, SME committees, and has been a Awards, Zimbabwe Investment Authority Awards, and Standards Association of Zimbabwe Quality Awards. Prior to founding the SME Association of Zimbabwe, Farai worked with the asset management industry, where his last position was as Managing Director of Premier Asset Management. He completed articles with Deloitte and holds a postgraduate diploma in applied accountancy, as well as a Bachelor of Accountants honors degree from the University of Zimbabwe. He is married and has 2 sons. Mr. Tambanengwe, over to you.
Thank you very much. Shall I say all protocol observed? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My topic, or the topic that I was given, was the informal economy, tapping or formalizing for contribution to the GDP or to the fiscus. And when I was given this topic, I thought I just had to come here, present it, and then go, which is what I'm used to doing. I wasn't told I would also be expected to facilitate. So what I will try to do is I'll try to cut short on the presentation so that we can focus a lot more on the facilitatory role. Before I get into my presentation, I'd like to ask a question. How many of us here, if you got home and you found your child or grandchild, whatever the case may be, you found them eating a $5 chocolate, how many of you would be worried or would question what is going on? Up on one hand. if, okay, I've got another end. Now, picture a scenario where you've got a family in Budiriro. The father has been laid off, the mother is surviving by selling vegetables maybe, and the father got home and saw their child eating a $5 chocolate. Do you think that they will be concerned about that? Very much so. Why? Is there anything wrong with eating a $5 chocolate? No, their concern is because they themselves cannot afford to buy the $5 chocolate. And probably what would happen is that evening the father would report to the mother and there would be a tribunal to discuss this issue of why or how the kid got to be eating a $5 chocolate. Isn't that so? What I'm trying to bring out here is that certain things are based on a matter of perspective. And I think this topic is exactly the same thing. The reason why there's so much halabaloo, there's so much noise around taxing the informal sector, I don't believe it's an issue of the informal sector itself, but it's an issue that's coming from the fact that the father and the mother are not productive. And I'll explain further as I go through my presentation. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I got lost by the technology there. The first thing for me, as far as I'm concerned, is that solving a problem requires that you first understand its source or roots. And that is why I gave that illustration. Because sometimes we tend to look at the wrong thing. And when we look at the wrong thing, we'll come up with the wrong solutions. Because you start to address symptoms as opposed to addressing the actual disease that you are confronted by. So I'll just talk a bit about causes of informality. Informality by nature is a feature of most, if not all, economies. There will always be an informal sector in any economy. But the issue is about scale. And when we look at Zimbabwe, really the reason why the informal sector has become so topical is because it has now dominated the economy. To some extent, you also find that informality is dependent on the state of the country or a nation. In other words, if you look at our African countries, our stages of development are different. Some were colonized. I think Dr. Kanyenze was mentioning about was it the Belgian countries, being the worst colonizers. Some were colonized by the good colonizers, and that impacts on the state of a nation. But I think when we then look at the Zimbabwean context, the Zimbabwean context is that we have come from a region where we were highly developed, and we have gone through a process of people call it deindustrialization, informalization, etc., etc. And that really is a function of slack governance structures. And I'm not going to point fingers in terms of whether it's political governance, whether it's governance at the social level, at the business level, but I think there are slack structures somewhere. And obviously, the lack of formal employment opportunities affects informalization. So people do not, especially when you consider a country like Zimbabwe, which is composed of a very highly educated populace, people do not move into informalization by choice. They move there because of circumstances. And again, if you look at Zimbabwe, the issue has been the decimation of the formal sector. So the problem is not why is there an informal sector or is the informal sector paying taxes. The problem is what has happened to the formal sector. What has happened, such a thing was being thrown around between government, people, and leaders, etc., but it's there. I think that's the fact of the matter. And of course, there's active evasion by participants in the informal sector, which also can be a cause of that. You'll find there are people in society, and this applies in any society, there are people who are carrying out activities that they do not necessarily want to be governed. So what are the solutions? Having understood the problem, for me, I think the first thing is to focus on the way out and not to focus on the obstacle. In defensive driving, they say when there's an obstacle, you have to look at where you are going. Don't keep on looking at the obstacle. Because if you keep on looking at the obstacle, you are going to hit another obstacle because you are not focusing on where you are supposed to be going. And I think the same thing applies to this scenario. Instead of focusing on saying, how do we formalize the informal sector, how do we tax them, how do we, okay, let me not even get into that issue, but the issue is that what we must do is to grow the formal sector or move away from deindustrialization, move away from informalization. That is what we are supposed to actually be focusing on. And I think this was alluded to already as well, looking at long-term planning as opposed to firefighting. Because a lot of what we do is firefighting, whether it's at government level, whether it's at the corporate level, what we are doing mostly is firefighting. So what we need to do is to look at the long term, look at the strategic intent behind what we are doing, correction of macroeconomic distortions. The currency issue, that issue is critical. Right now we've got, I was reading the last monetary policy issued by the Reserve Bank, and the governor had an interesting part where he was talking about a local currency, in fact local dollars and foreign dollars. Now the issue is, what are these local dollars? You see, and even the Honorable was talking about, we have a problem, we print, and I'm glad he said it, because it's something that needs to be said. What is this money that we are saying we have in our bank accounts? It certainly is not US dollars. It's not bond notes, because we know that we said we are going to issue 200 million of those. So what we've got is something in our bank accounts that is not legitimate. And because it's not legitimate, we run back to the issue where we have a parallel market. To me, we need to legitimize it. If it's there, it's there. Let's legitimize it. Let's give it a rate. Let's let it float. Because those distortions then create other distortions. We were discussing the issue of SI64. Yes, it could save your local companies, but what is it doing to export competitiveness? And I heard that there were threats of retaliation. What I can tell you is there was actual retaliation. There are products that cannot move out of Zimbabwe. Why? Because people have either put in non-tariff barriers, they've put in surtaxes. Yes, the duty-free status can remain, but you now have surtaxes. So there are responses. And actions do have consequences. As long as you are going to distort your economy, you can be assured there's going to be something negative happening. And then the issue of value chain linkages. I think that has been alluded to as well in previous presentations. Excuse me. And I think in this area, the corporate sector has to take the lead. I'm not going to dwell on government's issues. I'm going to dwell on the corporate sector's issues, because you are the people who are here. If, as a large corporate, for example, you decide, okay, we're going to put 500 people onto the streets, those 500 people will still have to earn a living. And the best way they know to earn a living is in the same industry that they've been operating. In other words, they will become your competition. What to me would be a better strategy is to say, all right, I'm going to offload some people, the people who are doing my manufacturing. Let me help you. Let's set up a company. You guys manufacture, and then you give to me, and I sell. And the people who are doing my sales, instead of letting them lose, why don't you guys go and set up your businesses, and I'm going to be giving you the product so that you sell, and then you give me something back. I think we have to be innovative around what we are doing, because it's easy to say, no, you know what, make it easy for us to retrench, make it easy for us to dump people. But where are those people going to go? They have to survive. And because they cannot survive in a formal setup, they are going to go into the informal setup. And when they go into the informal setup, they are now importing from China, they are now importing. Because if you look at the things that come in here, it's not the Chinese bringing them, it's the Zimbabweans importing from outside. And these are the Zimbabweans that have been laid off jobs. I'll give another scenario. If you look at the banks, around when we dollarized, the banks were very happy to give salary-based loans. They would not want to hear about an SME who needs a loan to improve their capacity, because for them it was high risk. But what was the impact of that? Eventually, because you are funding consumption, so eventually, because you are funding consumption and ignoring production, we are where we are because of those issues. We have to think strategically in order for us to, and I think the corporate sector is best placed to take a lead there. Then another issue that was talked about at some point, it seemed like something was going to happen and then nothing happened. The issue of managing our human resource exports. People live here, we've got very educated people all over the world. I would almost hazard to say that we contribute a significant, if you look at the Zimbabweans out there, they contribute a significant proportion to global GDPs. But as a country, we are not tapping into that, and this was a resource that we invested in. Because remember, when we were busy giving free education all the way through to tertiary level, these are the same people who have left the country, and they are not paying a dime back into the country. So we need to manage that human resource export. Other countries do that, and they've benefited immensely because they've managed to tap into this resource which we are neglecting. And that resource also then ends up on the street, because this is how you come up with graduates on the streets. But if we could manage the process of exporting them, we could realize value out of that. Governance, I'm not going to talk about governance because the issue of corruption, I think, was dealt with quite comprehensively. And then I'll touch on, obviously, because I was given the topic, I know people want to hear how it can be done. So I'll touch on that. The first thing you need to address is education. You need entrepreneurship education in your formal system. Because what happens is someone comes out of O-level, A-level, university, they start a business, they have no idea what the compliance level is or what compliance is required in which industry. So they learn compliance through clashes with the law. So the first thing that we need to do is actually to educate people, and even people to understand the value of compliance, why they need to comply, what happens to that money. Obviously it comes back to those issues of accountability and transparency, but that's the starting point. And then you have to also be innovative, because what's happening, and it's the same problem that we find throughout the SME sector, is that people try to take what applies to large corporates and then just apply it to an SME. Large corporates have people like yourself, chartered accountants, to handle their tax affairs, to handle their accounting affairs. When I'm running an SME, I'm by myself. So I'm the production manager, I'm the marketing, I'm the human resources, I'm the cleaner. Am I going to be able to do what large companies need to employ a highly educated person, a person at the level of where you people are? I'll never be able to do it. So obviously, if the system is complicated, compliance is always going to be low. Not because people don't want, but because it's not possible. So what I would look at is things like in building the taxes in your licenses, in your workspace rentals, but again, they have to be rationalized. Because you'll find that someone running an office, if you look at the Deloitte's office, and someone running a very small corner in some part of town, you require the same license. It makes no sense. And that license is it's an annual license. For example, you are required to pay, say, $365. But SMEs do not earn their money that way. They don't have money to be able to do a one-off payment. But if you look at the flea markets, each one pays maybe $10 every day to come there. If you inbuild your tax into there, you are going to collect your money. You are definitely going to collect it. But it's not as much as people would want to think. That's what we must understand. There isn't, when people talk of these, like there was the figure of $7 billion or even $15 billion circulating in the SME sector. This is a sector with 2.8 million people in it. Divide 15 billion by 2.8 million, what do you get? Is it a number that we should be sitting down to discuss? And then obviously incentivizing, there's also things like loans, because those are the things that growing enterprises are looking for. They want loans, they want government tenders. So if that incentive is clear-cut, and also there is a need for tax breaks, because remember, SMEs are capitalizing their businesses because they still need to grow. and the only way they can grow is through retaining their own earnings. But if those earnings are systematically taken out by the taxman, then again they cannot achieve that growth. So it kind of